Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Here we are in the 11th morning of Inspirations of the Companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're going to go ahead and continue in the character trait of extreme generosity and the idea of just selflessness, the idea of that wealth is meant to be used for the cause of Allah, and that our contributions are a way of us getting closer to Allah. That what we give away from our worldly possessions is gaining us spiritual heavenly possessions. And so the companions were clearly, as a collective, convinced of this idea. So the first thing I want to mention is, and it can never be overstated, is the beginnings of the endowment concept. As far as I know in world history, this authentic hadith is where the concept, the modern concept of the endowment started. So basically, after the Khaybar expedition, Umar ibn Khattab, he acquired a large property in Khaybar, and it has many, many palm trees with lots of date fruits yielding. It has orchards for grapes. It has water wells. It's a very big, nice property. So Umar, radiallahu anhu, knowing he lives in Medina and Khaybar is a good distance away, he said, rather than, going through all the difficulty of employing people and all of that from my own wealth, and to make that another part of my own wealth, he came to the Prophet. He said, what would be a good way to deal with this? I'm looking into perhaps donating it somehow. And so Umar was leaning towards the direction that I would donate this property in Khaybar for poor people, just split it up between them, And so then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, لَعَلَّكَ حَبَسْتَ أَصْلَهُ. And so the phrase here is pretty strong Arabic. It means, why don't you just keep it, that its base reality as a property is not for sale, and that you make a decree on it that it will be permanently used in the service of the needy. And so basically, it will never be sold to anyone, and it will never be inherited, and it will never make profits for any people. Its job will be to serve the poor, to serve the wayfarers and the guests, and those who work for its upkeep and so forth can take from it with reasonable means. And so that was actually the beginning of the endowment. And in Umar's time as the caliph later on, after the Prophet ﷺ passed, and after Abu Bakr was able to keep the ummah together after some serious dangerous moves by some of the tribes, he very much instituted this policy all over the caliphate, that there would be endowment institutions, that the purpose of them is not to make money. So this is like the beginnings of your nonprofit. So the purpose of it is to be in the service of the welfare of society. And so that was a very special part of our history, because I have yet to find any other reference to it before such a thing. So the next hadith is Abdullah bin Umar. It was an amazingly generous person, and a person who's just, his thought process was on another level in terms of living with the Prophet, so much peace be upon him, and reading the Quran and studying it so well. So this is after the time the Prophet ﷺ had passed away. Abdullah bin Umar has now grown up. He's a man with a wife. And so him and his wife are traveling, and they stopped in a place called Jahfa. And they've been traveling on a journey, and they ran out of food rations. And so they just have some money and some water. So as Abdullah bin Umar came in there, he said, you know what? I would really like to have some fish. If you can find in the marketplace some fish. Now, Jahfa is not necessarily on the ocean necessarily, but his wife goes looking in the market, and he's kind of sitting there with their goods and things. She goes and she finds the nice big fish, and so she brings it, and then they get out there, because when you're traveling in the desert, you bring all your rations and your things and your necessities. So she pulls out the pan and cooks it up with some, whatever flavors on there that they have back then. And she makes this nice fish for him. So here it is. So she serves it to him, all happy to take care of her husband. And as he's looking into it and he's about to start pulling away the meat, he looks across the street. And he sees that across the street is there a poor man just standing there kind of looking. He's not begging, but he looks. So then he's thinking to himself, I'm going to go over there and see if this guy wants some of this fish. So Abdullah's wife knows that that's what he's looking at because she's his wife, mashallah, they have this figured out, very well. And so she says, look, why don't you just go give him a dirham or 2 dirhams, and then he can decide what he needs most with it. He said, no. The thing is, the Quran is very clear about giving what you love. And I think this man will enjoy this fish better than us. And she said, how could you do that? And then he just went over there. He said, are you hungry? The man said, oh, yes. And he said, what do you think? And he said, that fish looks so good. And he gave the fish to the guy across the street, the whole entire thing. It was a big fish too. It's what the hadith, this is hitan. So he comes back, and of course she's not happy with him. It's not that she's, not a pious woman. It's just she's like, man, I went through all that. You had me going to get this fish in the market, and then I've cooked it up. And now here you just give it away to somebody. So that is the beautiful generosity of the companions. So he told his wife, that man will love that fish far beyond what we could ever love from the fish. So similarly, I've given a whole sermon about this before, the famous ayah in the Quran, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You have not attained righteousness until you're ready to give what you love most out of your wealth. The thing that you really love most, you're going to give that to someone else that you believe, would enjoy it. And so there's many companions responded immediately to learning this verse by establishing their relationship with the Quran. So one of them that I didn't notice in my previous research, I found in this extensive book we're using. And so Zayd ibn Haritha, whenever he heard this verse, he had a very, very strong horse, the faras, it's a type horse you would use in a battle, and it's a very strong, powerful horse. His name was Shibla. And people used to know about Zayd's horse, Shibla. It was a very strong horse. He can go into the battle with it. And, back then, that's a big deal. Not everybody was having a strong horse to go into the battle. So Zayd then said to himself, when he heard the ayah, you cannot attain righteousness until you give out of what you love most. He knows Shibla is his most prized possession, without a doubt. It's clear. It's a clear decision. So he takes Shibla in with his son, Osama, and he goes in to meet the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, O Messenger of God, I want to give Shibla. I have heard the ayah in the Quran. You do not have righteousness until you give out of what you love most. And of course, as you know, Shibla, I love this. My property is the most beloved to me. So then the Prophet ﷺ smiled, and he took it from him, and then he said, here, let me see Osama. So then the Prophet ﷺ has Zayd's son Osama sitting in front of him, and he's saying, look, Zayd. And so Zayd is looking at him, and he's thinking, and so as the hadith says, he saw in the face of Zayd, his face changed, meaning he's thinking, oh man, how he looks on that horse, and so then the Prophet ﷺ told, he said, قَدْ قَبِلَهَا اللَّهُ مِنْكَ يَا Zayd, that God has accepted your charity. And so then Zayd smiled and accepted that he has now given this as a donation for the believers. And we'll take one more story here, inshallah. Once the Prophet ﷺ told the companions that we are facing a threat from a large tribe somewhere. I'm not sure if it was Yamama or what it was, but it doesn't mention in the hadith. There's speculation. But anyways, the Prophet ﷺ is telling the companions, we need to gather a solid army battalion, and we need to gather resources. So please give in charity for this army. Because they didn't really have a functioning army yet. And when they needed to go out there, they needed people to chip in. Not necessarily everybody was able to go. And so people would just chip in. So then Abdurrahman bin Auf is well known to be one of the richest, if not the richest companion of the Prophet ﷺ throughout the Prophet's biography. And so he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, here is 2,000 dirhams, which is a lot of money back then, a whole lot of money. And he said, I left for my family 2,000, and I've given half of all of my wealth because you have asked us to give charity. And so the Prophet ﷺ accepted it and prayed for him. And he said, may Allah bless you and your family. And may Allah bless this wealth that you put into this battle so that we can come out of it in a peaceful state, having gained the value that we are looking to gain in terms of stability. And so then later on that day, a poor Ansari guy, he comes and he brings in 2 handfuls of barley grain, some food. And he brings them in. He says, look, I had at my house 4 handfuls. So I brought in 2 handfuls for you. And so some of the hypocrites then tried to mock Abdurrahman bin Auf. They said, see, he's coming up here with dirhams and all that. And this man right here. And some of them, even the hypocrites are confused people. Some of them are mocking this other guy like, oh, now this guy, he saw Abdurrahman bin Auf give that. And now here he's coming in with his grain, like that makes a difference, So the Prophet basically commended both of them, saying, actually, what the man has given with his grain is more valuable. Even the Prophet has a very close relationship with Abdurrahman bin Auf, and they're from Mecca. And so that's how the Prophet ﷺ diffused the situation to give everybody their comfort zone. Abdurrahman bin Auf doesn't need anybody to tell him, what his intentions are or to give him a hard time about that. He knows good and well why he's doing what he's doing. So may Allah be pleased with all of them as those great examples, and may we reach that level of certainty and comfort that we're able to give out of our wealth for the cause of Allah and to support His message. Inshallah, for sure, MCC needs it now. So if you find the opportunity, go ahead and please go on the website where it says donate, press that button there, and give to your heart's content, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah bless all of you. And we'll see you tonight at the Quran recitation and the living Quran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.